This week on Focus on Photography, we sit down with the amazing Mr. Rick Sammon as he talks about taking photographs from pretty much the bottom of the globe. Check it out. Focus on Photography is brought to you from LastPass Studios. You're focused on security, but are your employees? LastPass can ensure that they are by making access and authentication seamless. Visit lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Focus on Photography, episode 12, recorded Thursday, January 23rd, 2020. One Picture Promise. Hey folks, I'm Matt Pruitt. This is Focus on Photography here on twit.to from the beautiful LastPass Studios in lovely Petaluma, California, where it's not raining anymore. Hallelujah. Hope y'all are doing well. I'm unbelievable as always, here with my man, my homie, the awesome content creator, Mr. Michael Woolsey. How you doing, brother?
Oh, man, feels so good. Can't wait to get into this discussion that's coming up.
I see you got your coffee there, but you also had you some extra little trinkets this morning.
I did.
As candy, so he's all fired up.
I'm all jacked up.
So if we have to figure out a way to keep him from bouncing off the walls this morning, folks, I am curious to hear your ideas. So chat room, let us know if you have any ideas to sort of slow him down just a touch today.
There you go.
It's good to see you, my man.
Good seeing you.
Also joining us today, we have a usual suspect, if you will, my man, Mr. Steve Brazill from Behind the Shot
Good morning,
TV.
gentlemen.
How you doing, my man?
I'm doing really good.
Good to see you.
For this time of morning.
We appreciate you joining us on the last episode to talk a good bit about the world of concert photography, because we know you really dive into that, and thought it would be a good fit to have you sit down and join us with Mr. Alan Hess and just sort of speak the language, if you will, because I can't speak that language myself. So
that was a great discussion.
You've done some good live music, though.
It was a hell of a show last week, and a lot of good feedback. So again, thank you so much for that, my man.
Yeah,
You're welcome. It was my pleasure. And isn't Alan amazing?
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. And he's been funny to follow on Twitter here recently, too, because he's been having a couple rants here and there.
Yes. Yeah, he does do that.
That could have gone on for a couple hours, actually. That was an excellent show.
It was. And now our guest of honor, wow. Whew. You know, we talked about Mr. Alan Hess having just a couple of books. Yeah. In comparison to our guest today, Mr. Rick Sammon, who has what? I believe, 20 books? No.
40.
30 books? No. 40 books.
Nice.
Holy moly. Mr. Rick Sammon joins us this week, folks. How you doing, Mr. Sammon?
Well, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. And I have a question for you, Ant.
Sure.
If I work out, can I look like that? I mean, you look pretty damn good, man.
Yeah, he's
I'm going to stop writing books. I got to get out and exercise more. Forget this typing.
Oh, no. Well, see, the thing is that what most people forget is working out, shooting photography, and lots of whiskey. That's the combination right there.
Yep, that sounds good to me.
Everybody forgets that last step. But
I'm in for the whiskey.
But Mr. Sammon, I really do appreciate you joining us. Mr. Sammon is an amazing photographer that's been pretty much all over the globe, literally, from top to bottom, and has shared a lot of different stories with this different books and a lot of insight. And we're going to talk about his latest book here later on in the show. I'll just say, let's put it this way. This book is about photography, but yet it has no images in it. Figure that out, folks. This is going to be a fun one. All right, so this is Focus on Photography for the folks that are just hopping in for the very first time and checking out this show. First off, thank you. So now that you're here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button in your favorite podcatcher of choice, and then go ahead and hit the share button so everybody knows what you're listening to and can join in on the conversations and discussions and learn a little bit more about our wonderful show that we affectionately call FOP. On this show, we like to talk about, just briefly, the news and rumors in the world of photography, whether it's video stuff or photography stuff. We'll get a little technical here and there, but we'll just talk about that stuff briefly. And then we'll get more into just other discussions about being a content creator, photographer, videographer, designer, what have you, and we'll just sit around these mics and just have a good time just chatting about it. Granted, we have amazing guests on here, you know, with Mr. Rick Sammon, but I personally do not want to interview Mr. Sammon, you know?
Nope.
Is that how you feel, Wolves?
No, it's just a good exchange about photography.
I don't want to do an interview. I want us to just sit down and chat and just pick his brain and allow him to share some of his insight. So hopefully it'll help me be a better creator. It'll help Mr. Wolves be a better creator. And anybody listening to this show be better and take something and put it into.
And he knows more about photography than you and I will ever know.
Exactly.
Well, that's because I'm way older.
Well, I didn't say that.
No, I don't know. Well,
I didn't say that. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with this little bit of news and rumors and feedback. First, I want to give some feedback to one of our listeners that's on Instagram. His name is Black Hat Matt down in Orlando, and recently he tagged me and Wolves on Instagram, and it just really warmed my heart.
Yeah.
He basically just talked about, hey, I got a couple different tips and tricks from listening to the show, especially listening to Mr. Hess and Mr. Brazill go on about their tactics for shooting these concerts. And he shared this group of images from a recent concert that he shot down in Orlando, and it's the Highland Games. So you have these guys on stage in kilts.
Right, it's awesome.
Beautiful.
And the name of the band was
energy.
Off Kilter.
Off Kilter.
Yeah, I like that.
Absolutely beautiful. It was so well done. When you flip through these, you can just see the energy. And my favorite one has to be the drummer, because I know Mr. Brazill talked about the drummers and just trying to get that money shot with the drummers can be so technical and almost elusive at times, right, Mr. Brazill?
And he did a really good job. He got some good pictures. I mean, the one with the hair going all over, I dug.
Man.
That's awesome.
And he seemed like he took your pointers about what side of the mic and where the kind of, that's really awesome. It's very, very good.
It was great to see that. So, folks, if you're listening to this and you want to reach out to us on the social medias, you can definitely do that and just tag either myself or Wolves or Brazill or whomever, and just let us know, hey, this is some of the stuff that we shot. This is what we've learned, and I'm definitely going to give you a shout out when I see stuff like this. This was great, and it really warmed my heart to let us know that people are listening and they are learning a little bit from us, you know.
Yeah, and I think that part of Instagram and Facebook or whatever social media is a place to kind of share and be able to give some tips, and I think it's important to kind of grow that community in that way.
Yeah. Especially because it seems like at one time Instagram was more of a me platform with photography, whether it's a ton of selfies or whether it was a ton of look at where I am today, blah blah blah, you know, and it just sort of got braggadocious to me, and I love seeing stuff like this here, and I love the energy that comes from this. And just like you said, it's about a community, you know, and being able to build that up and just sort of spread those good vibes. So yeah,
I agree.
Mr. Matt, thank you so much. I will put a link to this post in our Focus on Photography show notes this week, so click through to that and check him out and show him some love on Instagram. All right. All right. So again, let's move on. This morning, I know we don't talk video a lot on here. We probably should talk it more because Wolves is an outstanding video guy. So I'm probably going to be picking your brain here more in the future. But video, 1 second of video is essentially 24 still images, right?
That's about right.
Or 30.
Okay. Or
30 or 60.
Of course, Mr.
Or
Technical. Come on, man.
I know.
Or 120.
Or 29 point. Yeah.
Come on, man. But this morning, Adobe announced a new update to their product, Premiere Pro. It's going to start rolling out. They didn't give us an exact date, and it's called Production Panel. And the premise behind this is to allow people to be a lot more collaborative with their video production. So this is not just a YouTube vlogger, if you will, that's just doing a little 10-minute video. This is for people that are really trying to put something big and massive together, and they got a team of people working on multiple sequences and things of that nature, and they're giving you an extra panel inside of their existing software to help you organize it and sync it up to the cloud and And if you don't want it in the cloud, you can pull it out of the cloud, because of course when you start talking cloud, you start talking about security and things like that. But
and storage space
space, but a lot of it is still going to be handled on your particular rig, on your computer. So all of the processing and stuff is not necessarily going to be done in the cloud. It's seems like it's a good idea, because again, collaboration is key on those big programs, and allowing people to step in and not miss a beat and have miscommunication on who's working on this sequence, who's working on that, and this edit's supposed to be done this way, and and all of it's just sort of syncing up so everybody can be on the same page. Adobe's been talking about this for years and years, as far as just being able to do online collaboration, and it's finally come to head now with this new announcement today. Again, you can see it on their blog. I actually wrote about it on my blog on antpruitt.com. They didn't give us an exact release date, but I got a hunch, since NAB is right around the corner in the next couple months, so it's going to be, I'm pretty sure it'll be right before NAB or right on the day of NAB. Yeah,
that's so close, though. You'd almost think if they were going to announce this now that they'd say that date.
Right.
Otherwise, you'd wait and announce it at NAB.
Right. Exactly.
Well, I think it's going to be a game changer.
Yeah.
So if you're a director and you're wanting to be with be looking at what the editor is doing, it'd be a great way to kind of collaborate. But as well as, I think nowadays, teams are everywhere. And so it's so important to be able to have that.
When you say everywhere, you don't just necessarily mean one here in Petaluma and then one down the road in San Francisco. We're
around the world.
Yeah, around the world. Exactly right. Yeah, and especially if you're traveling, like if you're in Antarctica.
Right.
You want to see what...
we had internet there, so I could have done that.
Right. And actually...
Was it fast? How fast was it?
It was, well, I don't know the exact speed, Mr. Technical. I was able to post stuff. Yeah, I was able to post stuff on Facebook and Twitter and send emails, and it was great. Yeah,
I cannot
at certain points.
Internet in Antarctica. It just doesn't sound right.
Yeah. Well, it beats beating the snowmobile going up to North Pole in the 60s.
Yeah.
But the thing is, let's say if you're working on a project and that you're the creator and that you wanted to see what people were doing, what a great way to see where people are in their progress. And I think it kind of allows you to be a little bit more creative, a little bit more hands-on while you're moving on to your next project.
But it might be like too many cooks spoil the broth. Like have about all these people. Well, you know what? I think the camera should have been here. Maybe this.
Well, yeah, and you do run into that. You run into that just day-to-day stuff.
Yeah.
But it takes some leadership to step in and say, hey, I need to lock down permissions for certain files, certain assets, and a lot of times. And Mr. Steve knows this, you can go onto the network drive and just have that drive only accessible to the director or only accessible to the colorist and things like that. That way you don't have all of the cooks, just in the same pot, So there are some tools out there from a technical standpoint, and I'm curious to see more of how Adobe is going to allow you to integrate that.
I think it's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a game changer if it really works.
Yeah, I think for people who do, it's not going to be for me, but for people who do multi-person projects, this could be a game changer.
Yeah.
One more thing on the world of video. This is stepping away from Premiere Pro and going to a competitor, FXHome. This is a piece of video editing software that has been free for about as long as I can remember. And I've actually tried it out a couple of years ago before I got into Premiere Pro, and it's not bad. It's good enough for people to get in there and knock out some projects and do a decent job of of showing something off in the video format. Well, they just recently announced that, hey, yes, we've been free, but we're going to give you the option to donate. And then we're going to take your donation and match it to help out the folks in Australia that are still battling the wildfire issues out there. And I thought that was something that was worth mentioning this week because, again, this is something that goes beyond. This goes beyond creating content. It's something, as much as we love creating content, there are more important things out there. And I like the fact that these companies, someone that's as small as FXHome saying, hey, we want to do something.
Right.
So this is how we can help. You help us.
Well, and what's interesting is the software is hit Film Express 14.
Hit Films, right.
Yeah, and they've gone to what is effectively a freemium model. So it's always been free, and it is still free.
Still free.
I mean, you can still get it free, but if you pay, and there's different levels, $9, $20, $40 to $100, they will donate to the WWF or the Australia Emergency Brush Fire Fund. Other causes coming, obviously, in the future because they're going to keep this going. And I think it's a neat idea for a free software to go freemium.
Yep. Instead of it, because a lot of times when people hear freemium software packages, they're automatically thinking profit for the company that put it together. And then a lot of times that sours people because they think, oh man, you used to be free, so now you're trying to get all fat and happy and corporate, yada 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 yada. I think this was a good way to say, hey, no, this is where our focus is right now. So we're going to keep making this product, but it's bigger than just creating videos. It's bigger than just creating content.
I think it's a great idea, but it's I have to say I've never used the product, so but I think that's really wonderful that a company or any company is is willing and able to do it.
And me, I'll say this because it's I'm sure it's bad on me. So if you want to slap me on the wrist, you can. But I had no idea how serious those wildfires were.
There was a geologist on the ship who gave a talk on climate change.
Right.
Not making it political, just stating facts.
Right.
And he said if there was a fire that size in the United States, that people in the United States would pay attention to climate change.
Exactly right.
I mean, it is devastating. The fires are getting under control, but he had these graphs. Dr. Jason Hicks is his name.
Okay.
And it was just amazing, his talk on climate change. And the thing about the fires, that's the thing. Again, if there were fires that size in the United States, people would start to worry.
And that makes total sense to me because, and I'm sure I'm going to get some heat for this one, but it seems like here in the U.S. we have this sort of narcissistic attitude of being the best at everything that we do, and almost as if we can't be touched. And when stuff doesn't necessarily happen in our backyard, it's almost dismissive. You know what I'm saying?
I'm smiling because I agree 100% with you.
Okay.
But
okay, so that's one person that's not going to roast me for saying that.
Well, we could have a whole nother talk on
exactly
climate
right.
change, nuclear power, and all this other stuff.
True.
But the whole idea that I think people feel that we're working against nature and not with nature, and it's and the attitude needs to be changed in that direction, where we're nature's just going to continue going forward, and we're on for the ride. But I think there's a way that we could actually participate in a little bit more as a stewardship way than what we're doing right now. So I totally agree.
No doubt.
And photography is a way to make people change.
That's exactly right. You could show the devastation. That's one way to draw attention, but you could also show the incredible beauty. And photographers like Art Wolf have chosen to do that. Myself, I can't go to India and photograph the poverty. On another level, I want to photograph the beauty. So I think the photographers who are listening, we don't have to show all the sadness and the destruction of the starving polar bears, and I could go on and on about that. But because of climate change. But if we just show the beauty, I think that'll help kids, say, I have to protect this world that we live in.
One of the images from that fire is actually the koala bear going up to cyclists and getting water. I
remember seeing that.
And just that
man, that broke my heart.
Yeah, that type of connection is what the beauty of photography and the beauty
as photojournalism has always done, and for that matter, I guess all arts. Music can move people, photography can move people, the written word can move people. Yeah, arts are important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, the picture in the late 1960s of the naked girl in Vietnam after the napalm was dropped, she's crying and running towards the soldiers. That picture helped to stop the war. If not, it was the factor that helped to stop the war. And every night there was stuff on the news and the videos and the soldiers and all this other stuff. But I think that power we were talking before about how many frames per second.
Yeah.
But I think seeing that frozen moment in time is a lot more effective for me as a photographer. A filmmaker would say, "Got to show the film," right? But I think it's just amazing the power of photography.
Oh, absolutely! Like James Notway and his work with. Just brilliant work. He's changed my view of many things.
Jeez, 19 minutes in and I've already gotten chills. What the heck, gentlemen? Slow down. I don't normally get chills until about 3/4 through the show. Good grief, man.
Well, this is a big guy like you, put your jacket back on.
Good stuff. All right. One more thing I wanted to touch on, and it's thinking about Mr. Sammon's just recent trips down to Antarctica. This came to mind. Autel Robotics. I saw them at CES. Autel Robotics is a company that produces drones, and they're a direct competitor to the DJI folks. And I know drones have gotten a bit of a bad rap recently because there's been a lot of idiocy when it comes to drones. And people are not paying attention to the different FAA regulations and just common sense rules of how to use a drone if you're going to go out and shoot a video or shoot some aerial photography. But Autel has now stepped up and announced its, and I'm going to put in air quotes, 8K drone.
Or 6K.
Well, they have 2.
6K Pro, yeah.
They have 2. So you have the 8K drone, the Evo 2, and you have the Evo 2 Pro, which is going to be 6K. And I've reached out to them at CES to say, hey, let me know if we could talk a little bit more about it, if I can get my hands on it and just, do my own comparison. And I haven't heard back from them yet. Surprise, surprise. But there have been some other videos that have been leaked out to other quote unquote influencers on YouTube. And this got my attention because the 8K Evo 2 has a 1/2 inch sensor. It's right at 1/2 an inch on the sensor. And it just sort of boggles my mind because I'm thinking, I don't know if that's going to be possible. And if it is possible, I don't know just how good that's going to look.
How do you fit those bits?
Right.
And can those bits be any good when you're doing 8,000 by 6,000 on a 1/2 inch sensor?
Right. It just didn't sound right. I was thinking, I was like, okay, so maybe that's just another selling point because a lot of people in the consumer space are thinking the same way they feel about megapixels. If you show them a 20 megapixel Canon 1DX Mark III and show them a 24 megapixel Canon 6D
5D4 or whatever,
right, something like that, they're going to go to that second one because of the megapixels number, regardless of the technology that's built into that high end 1DX Mark III. I don't know, it just sort of rubbed me the wrong way, and that's probably why Autel hasn't reached back out to me.
They're really going to reach out to you now.
And the thing is, I'm a fan. I own an Autel drone, and I've always loved it because that drone, first and foremost, it did a really good job for a lot less of the price of a DJI drone. And
these are really well priced.
Right.
Like the Pro has a 1 inch sensor,
right?
But it's only 6K,
and it's only 6K.
That actually sounds better to me.
It makes
the Pro.
more sense, right?
It makes way more sense, and the Pro's only $1,800 basically.
Yeah, so something like that, I'm like, okay, that makes more sense, and then they get the pricing point right. But Autel in general, they're a Chinese company, but they have a base here in the U.S. and they're up in the Seattle area. And when I was deciding on getting a drone many years ago, I looked at the quality of their drone versus the DJI and versus the support. And I was happy to go with Autel because of their support being right here in the U.S. And I think I've had to turn my drone in maybe 3 times, and it took no time to get it fixed.
That's nice.
No time.
Did you see the speeds?
They're actually, that's
was it 40 miles?
Oh,
it's the normal speed's 33.5 miles an hour.
Yeah.
But what they call ludicrous mode is 48 miles an hour for a drone.
48 miles an hour.
And you can control this thing up to 5.5 miles away. So I'm sitting back thinking, I can't keep track of my drone, or I don't own a drone, but drones that I've used over my head.
Again, those are big gaudy numbers that sounds good to a regular consumer. But
you're not going to use it.
I've been out there flying drones, and you don't want that drone going that fast.
Once it gets out of ear range, you're going.
You don't want it going that fast, because eventually you do need to make that drone stop, and it doesn't just stop the same way a car stops.
It takes a little bit of time.
So I didn't really care for those numbers. So again, that's probably just my get off your lawn talk here. Is just give me some real world numbers. Don't just give me all of these big gaudy numbers that says, okay, come buy us because we got the higher megapixels and the higher video resolution. Mr. Sammon, what are your thoughts with drones? And did you have anybody down there with drones in Antarctica?
Well, I don't have one, and to use a drone in Antarctica, you have to write to this group, because it's called IOTA. It's a lot of different countries are involved in IOTA, this Antarctica treaty, and you'd be hard pressed to get a license. I mean, maybe David Attenborough could get a license to use a drone, but other than that, I agree. With that 5-mile radius, little planes flying around, it makes me nervous.
Yeah, same here.
Oh no.
Yep.
They did have one. Did you see the Duel? They didn't give a price on it, but the Duel is 8K.
They
and
didn't
thermal.
have that one at CES. At least I didn't see it out there. They've had a similar model like that with previous iterations, and it had the FLIR cameras on it, and all of that is great technology and could be highly
first
useful.
Responders, stuff like that.
Those
awesome.
are great. But I didn't get to see those firsthand while I was at CES, and they haven't mentioned anything to me. But I talked to my friend Austin. I don't know if you guys follow Drone Nerds, dronenerds.com. They're a really good site that talks about all of the drones out there, not just DJI, not just Autel, just whatever that's out there. And they have a lot of different resources and insight. And he's pretty much saying the same thing that we're saying, like 8K on a 1/2-inch sensor.
Yeah.
Something's not adding up here. Something's
I'd have a drone if I could fly it where I wanted to. Like, you can't fly it in the national parks, can't fly it in the state parks, can't fly it around New York.
Right.
I mean, but can you fly it 5 miles away, right? Go out on a ship and go in the middle of the ocean.
Heck, all of my friends in LA that have drones, when they go to pull up the flight pass for drones, it's like red. You can't fly anywhere in LA either. It's like, what's the point? So it's been pretty tough on the drone space because of the idiocy. It was a little more lenient at one time, but because people have been so irresponsible with these things, we've had to tighten up. I never got my Part 107 certification. I started to do that, and then I just decided to decline and not worry about it because I didn't see it benefiting me where I was at that time. But I did, have mine registered properly, and I could use it under the hobbyist filing without issue where I was, as long as I checked with, where I was going to be flying, when I was going to be flying, and knew my altitude. I even did my check-ins here and there with the local ATC, because in some areas, it warns you to call your local ATC and let them know. And ATC stands for Air Traffic Control. Let them know you're going to be flying. And there was one instance when I did that. I was down in Hilton Head, South Carolina. Okay. Beautiful beach area. But where I was hanging out was near one of their small regional airports. Right. And I called up the ATC to say, hey, I'm Aunt Pruitt. I'm going to be flying my drone at such and such time. I will be staying around this area, and I'll be roughly at 75 feet. Just because of the shot that I was looking for. I didn't need to get any higher than that. And when I called him, he cut me off. Oh. He's like, you don't, okay, wait, call me back. And he hung up on me. And I said, now I wondered if I really needed to get this shot done for production or whatever, how's that going to go? It's just screwing up my timing. So I called him back about an hour later, and he said, oh, yeah, I remember talking to you earlier. And he said it flat out like this: I appreciate you calling, but we really don't care. Oh.
Interesting.
We really don't care. He says, just stay out of the way. He says, the fact that you called, that tells me that you don't want to tear up your drone. So you're going to be fine, and we're going to be fine.
That you're already responsible. Reverb Mike said, give me a second. I need to land a plane.
Reverb, so funny. But yeah, drones are, I'd like to get a new drone. The Evo 2 Pro is probably the route I would go, but drone nerds and Autel, y'all get at me so I can, learn a little bit more before I make that purchase. Even though it's a great price, it just sort of blindly make that purchase too. I mean, they're under two.
Yeah, see, for me, I have no need for a drone because where I live in Southern California, I'd have to drive an hour every time I want to fly. And I know I won't, so.
You're not flying. All right, we're going to take a quick break here, folks. First and foremost, thank you all so much for hopping in and joining us this week. We got my man, Mr. Steve Brazill, and we also have Mr. Rick Sammon, just two outstanding photographers from concert photography, from shooting at the bottom of the globe and getting up close and personal with these little cute penguins and glaciers. And then we have my man at Field Sonoma here, Mr. Michael Woolsey. Just another great day here at Focus on Photography here at twit.to. But let's go ahead and give me a little bit of help, folks. It's that time of year where we like to do some surveys here at Twit. And what I need you to do is hop on over to twit.to/survey20 and just go in there and fill out the listener and viewer survey. It'll allow us to help figure out what you guys and ladies want as a podcast segment and podcast show, and let us know what to actually provide for you as a listener and give you even better content year after year after year. I've completed these surveys over the years because I know it's helpful for Twit, because before coming to Twit, I was a fan. I've been listening to Twit for 10 years, and I'm sort of used to completing these surveys. It only takes a couple of seconds. It's anonymous. It's none of your personal information on there. So if you got a second, fill those out. That's twit.to/survey20. We'll put a link to that in our show notes. Also, there are a bunch of other shows on this network, and in particular, Mr. Leo Laporte is very, very busy on this network doing a couple different shows each week. One is called Ask the Tech Guy. You can find that show at twit.tv/ATG. Now, this show is a great little quick hitter segment where you literally just send him your questions about your tech. You got a new laptop and it's running really, really slow. He can give you a couple different ideas of why it's running really slow. If you got yourself your new camera, the new Canon EOS R, and you're wondering, why can't I fit this lens on here?
Right.
He's probably got an answer for that, because you're trying to put an EF lens on this RF mount that doesn't work without an adapter. So hit him up, Mr. Leo Laporte, the tech guy known all around the world. That's twit.tv/ATG. Ask the Tech Guy. Thank you guys for all of your support and checking out all of the shows here on twit.tv. All right, so now I want to dive into Mr. Sammon, because you have a ton of knowledge and a ton of experience out here with your cameras, and you just come back from Antarctica. It was a couple of weeks ago, so isn't it cold in December in most places? And you went to Antarctica of all places, really?
Well, I came back on Saturday, and the thing is, being in Antarctica, taking the pictures is the easy thing.
Right.
It takes 4 days to get there. It takes 4 days to get back.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. Wow. So it's New York,
Wow.
To Buenos Aires, to the Ushuaia, the southernmost city on the planet. Then you take a boat for 2 days to go over.
Oh gosh.
So Antarctica, it was 37 degrees. They give you these nice heavy parkas and everything, and most people, we were like just leaving them along the beach, and we're like shedding them, like the birds.
Right.
They're molting.
37 sounds really warm.
Yeah, 37. That surprised me a little bit. I thought you were going to say something a little bit colder than that.
Well, we go in the summer, and my advice would be to go. It's their summer there now.
Okay.
So I would say it never got below it never got below freezing when we were there for the whole time. So we went to Antarctica and a nearby island, relatively nearby island, south of Georgia, and that's where they have the king penguins. And then we tried to go to the Falkland Islands where they have rockhopper penguins. But most people go there to photograph the animals. But you saw some of the pictures, and thank you for your compliments. But it's the blue ice.
Yes,
blue ice that is just. You see that in Greenland. You see that in Iceland in the glacial lagoon. But seeing the blue ice is. It's like being in a fairy tale.
Huh. Now, so I know that you are an official Canon Explorer of Light. So trips like going to Antarctica, was this part of a Canon assignment, or was this just for pleasure for Mr. Sammon because he likes to go somewhere and freeze his giblets off and shoot, or what?
Well, I went with a group called Abercrombie and Kent.
Okay.
And I was a photo coach on the ship. So I teach people how to take pictures on the ship, when we're in the Zodiacs, the inflatable boats, on land. I give 4 or 5 presentations. They have a beautiful theater there. And every night I have my laptop in the lounge there helping people enhance their pictures, because photographing a penguin, white feathers, black feathers against white or blue ice, this is very tricky. So, if it was slide film, it would be really hard. People don't know how lucky they are to have a digital camera and to have Photoshop and Lightroom to open up the shadows and tone down the highlights.
Right.
But it's amazing. And also, you mentioned before that I got up close to the penguins. It's really important, whether you're photographing a person or whatever, to respect the subject.
Right.
And down there, you have to respect the wildlife, and you have to respect the rules. There's a rule, getting back to this IOTA group, that you can't get closer than 15 feet to any animal. However, that doesn't mean the animals can't come close to you.
Yes.
All right.
So patience pays. I have pictures with like a 24-105 where the penguins almost fill the frame where they're maybe 3 feet in front of me. So in wildlife photography, no matter where you are, patience pays.
But see, that 15 feet, that I think that's fair, because that's enough to protect you and protect the animals from any type of harm, just in case something sort of goes wild. That makes total sense. And just follow that.
Like in Galapagos, the animals aren't hunted, so they're not afraid of people.
Right.
In Antarctica, the animals aren't hunted, so they're not afraid. So they can come close. But I would say, being that, we can learn so much. We can learn so much from Mother Nature. How animals communicate, how they survive. It's just magical. I really can't describe what it's like to be at the bottom of the world.
How'd you become?
And what it smells like too. I'm
what it smells like.
Well, I'm on an island, South Georgia Island, where they have 60,000 breeding pairs of king penguin.
Oh boy.
And that doesn't include, the chicks and all the other penguins.
Oh boy.
So penguins eat fish, right?
Yeah.
They krill, and they krill, and then they poop. So the smell is.
Boy.
They don't tell you
that
this in the air.
Totally changed my vision of Antarctica.
Yeah, you're right. Imagine opening like 60,000 cans of cat food.
How'd you get interested in nature photography, or what was your inspiration for it?
Well, actually, do you remember Sea Hunt?
Yeah.
Lloyd Bridges. He's one of my friends. Sea Hunt. It was a TV show in the 60s, and the Undersea World of Jacques Cousteau,
right?
Which is a TV show in the 60s too. So and Wild Kingdom.
Yep.
These shows opened. We were able to sit in our living rooms. Today it's so easy. You mentioned Instagram before. It's so easy to see around the world, right? What people are doing instantaneously. But back then, how magical was it to see this stuff? And so I just had a drive to just capture these beautiful animals, because a lot of them are endangered.
It's interesting you mentioned Lloyd Bridges. Jeff Bridges is also a photographer.
I know. He has a book out,
Yeah,
right?
he's got a book.
Yeah, has a new book out.
I just saw that.
And he's a good photographer, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does behind the scenes on all of the sets of his movies in black and white with a wide lux camera that is super fascinating.
Well, I wanted to mention when you said we're talking about Leo before, Leo Laporte. Say, well, one of the things some people may not know about him is this. He's a really nice guy. Like I was on his show years ago. He's genuinely, I don't know anyone on the planet who's ever said anything bad about him. They love him. And getting back to Lloyd Bridges, that Bridges family, whether it's Jeff Bridges or Lloyd Bridges or Cindy Bridges or Bo Bridges, I think, I rather in my life have someone say, he's a nice guy, rather than saying, he's a great photographer, right?
Yeah, that means more.
I think it means more, and it comes through. And when I think about Leo, I think about I know he's brilliant and he knows all this stuff, and we had a great time on the show. But what I remember is so nice to my wife and myself. It was just really nice. Like Steve in the background there. One of the nicest guys you're ever going to meet. And I just got to meet you guys.
Well, I'm okay. I'm not as nice as Mr. Laporte, but I'm okay.
Yeah. I'm just a tag along.
Whatever, man. Come on.
But you know what? What's important, whether it's and I talk about it in the book you mentioned that we have to have wherever we go emotional intelligence. And there's a book out by Daniel Goleman called Emotional Intelligence. But I think photographers, if we have emotional intelligence, if we're aware of everything that's going on around us and our effect on everything that's going on around us and the effect our photograph's going to have on us. I think this is way more important, and I know Steve and I have talked about this. This is way more important than knowing about the exposure triangle.
Oh, I agree. Absolutely agree.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
And that sounds more... It definitely sounds like a premise with your book, Phototherapy, Motivation, and Wisdom, Discovering the Power of Pictures. This is your latest book. You can get this on Amazon. We'll link to that in our show notes as well.
Thank you.
This book, again, it's funny to me because you're a photographer. You wrote a book, so I expect a book to have some amazing images to go along with the text to sort of help enhance the text and so on and so forth. But there's not one image in this book. And I love that approach because it's outside of the box, if you will. And again, it's to quote you were saying you want people to slow down and not be distracted by the photos in the book. You want people to hone in on what you're actually saying and what you're actually trying to present to them with regards to picking up your camera and getting out and shooting something every day and just owning that moment and soaking it all in, right?
Well, right. And I think we have to slow down. And Steve, my good friend Steve, he contributed. I had some awesome contributors. He also contributed to my next book. He's not only a great photographer, he's a very good writer and a nice guy. But let me ask you a question, which relates to my answer. Do any of you guys play golf?
Yes.
Nope.
Okay.
Not since I've been here, but yes.
Well, first of all, golf is the only sport, the only activity that the more lessons you take, the worse you can get.
Okay.
Right?
So true.
Right? But anyway, I'm taking a golf lesson, and I went to this one instructor, and the instructor gave me the best piece of advice I ever got. And the advice was, slow down.
Right.
And I think if we slow down in our photography, in our cooking, in our art, in our driving, in our texting, whatever. And I think, if you look at it, if you're reading text and you go to a picture, first of all, you may not like that picture. You're going to be distracted by the colors in the picture. You might be distracted for a million other reasons.
I will say on his book, it reminded me, and he and I talked about it when he was first going to write the book. It reminded me, I do magic as a hobby.
Oh.
And there's a book by Darwin Ortiz called Strong Magic, which is basically a book, but it doesn't a magic book, but it doesn't have any tricks in it, right? It doesn't have any effects or sleight of hand or anything. It's on magic theory, how to present.
Right.
And that's what this book reminds me of, right? It's ideas and motivation for you to take out to your shooting. And it's really well done.
Well, thank you. And I read this book. It's called Disrupt. I think that's the title of it. This guy talks about the guys in the sock company. They wanted to do something different. One guy says, why don't we make socks, a pair of socks that don't match, mismatched socks?
Okay.
People say the guy's crazy. Well, the guy quit. He started his company. After we get off, go online and do a search on mismatched socks. The guy's doing incredibly well. So the point is, a photo book, it's not a new idea.
Right.
You know, there's a book called The Artist's Way that was written. I think it's the 25th anniversary of it, or maybe even more than that. That has no pictures in it.
Mm-hmm.
And slowing down and thinking, Ansel Adams said the most important accessory is the 12 inches behind the lens, right?
That's right.
Uh-huh.
That's
and
right.
I took a chance doing it, and because I can type fast, and I like writing.
Braggadocious much?
Yeah.
No, I like writing, and writing, by the way, is the perfect thing for a neurotic person.
Oh, yeah.
Because you could sit there all day and talk to yourself.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
And a beautiful,
Or DJ.
easy brain dump. I totally agree with you on that. I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah, I'm a huge journalist.
Well, and I had never written anything when he asked me to write it. And I looked at my wife and I went, I'm going to tell him yes, but I don't know how to do this.
But you
And
have
yet
passion,
it was very therapeutic, which kind of ties into the title of the book. But it was really therapeutic to put ideas down on paper.
But you have passion, though, Mr. Brazill. That's another
He
thing.
does. And he writes like he talks,
Right.
you know? My wife read it, and my wife knows and loves Steve, too, like everybody else. And said, sounds just like him.
I love that. Because I've actually have seen posts from Mr. Brazill, like on Scott Kelby's vlog, too.
Oh, yeah.
So you know what you're doing, man. So you can toot your own horn on here, Steve. It's okay.
Nah. I don't write 40 books is crazy.
Well, getting back to Steve never writing before, who knows, Steve? You may have some great, other books. You may have your own books in your head, right? But I have a lot of quotes in the book, but my favorite is this. And it's the quote is, "It's never too late to be what you might have been." And this is now. I'm not going to be a brain surgeon, right? And I don't think I'm going to be, a fighter pilot. But I think for people to think about that, people, they get locked into, okay, I'm this, I'm that, But it's never too late to be what you might have been. You could pick up a guitar, you could pick up the piano, you could pick up something else and become really good at it. Because, and I think, I think the most important thing for a person to have is self-confidence. And there's a difference. There's a difference between having a strong ego and a big ego. And, I've been at conferences, Steve has been at those too, where some of the photographers have big egos. But, having a strong ego, believing in yourself. And Dr. Wayne Dyer talks about this in his book, Real Magic, making miracles in your everyday life. And basically what he talks about is that we can create our own reality.
Right.
And, I used to work in an advertising agency with a suit and a tie and the polished shoes and all that stuff. And I would say Dr. Wayne Dyer changed my life.
Man. I was talking to Wools prior to the show. We were out in the galley just getting our rocket fuel here with our coffee, or in his case, his tons and tons of candy and sugar.
Right. Sorry about that.
We were talking, and he joked about my technical background and Mr. Brazill's technical background. And
respectfully, though.
Right. It was a respectful joke. But the thing is, when I thought about that, that technical background brought me to where I am now as a content creator in the creative side, and just sort of enhanced things, because on that technical side, you're so rigid.
Right.
And then you brought up the point that, especially in IT, you're going to have to find some sort of way to be creative with your when you're fixing things,
right? Creative problem solving.
Problems, because IT is so ones and zeros and binary and rigid. You can only do things a certain way, but every now and then you got to go outside of that box just a touch,
right?
And it just sort of helped develop another side of my brain, if you will, that helped me dive even further and get even more interested in just picking up a camera and clicking the shutter,
right?
And so I probably would have never really gotten into photography as much as I did if it wasn't for those technical chops and just going full bore and understanding.
That's really interesting to me because I didn't get into photography until I had a son that I wanted to photograph in marching band in high school. And when I did, it like that, it was, oh, if somebody had told me this was geeky years ago,
right,
I would have jumped in head first.
Right.
I just didn't know. And once I found out the geekiness that you can inject into photography, you don't have to, but you can, I just fell in love with it. And to Rick's point, the quote that he gave about you never know what you could be. My wife just retired after 30 years on her job. She's too young to retire, but
congrats.
She's had 30 years on the job. And here's what she said to me, and it strikes me when Rick said that. She said, what if I'm meant to do something and I don't know it because I'm going to the same job every day?
There you go.
Ooh.
That's well said. Yeah, that's very good.
Another one of those chills up the spine.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of go back to problem solving that I think we all experience, where that you're in the middle of a shoot or you're in the middle of like maybe a technical problem. The whole idea of this, like you were talking about, Rick, about slowing down, kind of slowing down the mind and having that gap, a little breath to be able to kind of see something different at that moment, which can actually, where I think I tend to, maybe be moving pretty fast, but at some point you got to slow down, just take a, whatever that mental breath, and things could absolutely change in that moment, especially if you're a concert photographer. You maybe just take a look behind you and you see like there's a shot behind you, or just that there's a shot up in the sky for as a nature photographer. What do you feel about that kind of process?
Well, speaking of slowing down, Steve knows about this. I have what I call my one picture promise.
Oh.
And here's the one picture promise that I suggest to people, that if they're in a situation and if they could only take one picture using, if they could only take one picture rather than, let's go using the bow and arrow approach rather than the shotgun approach, like the spray and pray approach. If you could only take one picture, what would that one picture be? My one picture promise is that you'll take way fewer pictures, you'll think more, and you'll get a higher percentage of keepers. Now, if you're photographing a bald eagle that can fly 90 miles an hour in Alaska, you're going to have to put your camera on high frame rate, but you can still have that one picture promise thinking about, okay, I want to capture the gesture because in wildlife photography, gesture is one of the most important things, in addition to getting the eye in focus, well lit in focus. But I think if we think about that one picture promise, we will. It's kind of like a guitar solo. If Steve, he's photographed all these great bands. If the guitar solo says, "Okay, I only have like X amount of time to play a guitar solo. If I could only play these notes, if I could only play within this scale or whatever, what would that guitar solo be?" I think it could be applied to a lot of different things. So, I think slowly, for someone as hyper as I am, and Steve knows I'm very hyper. It's hard. It's hard to. Yeah, it's hard to slow down, but I think the one picture promise is some of the best advice I could be to would be to give to someone. Think about if he only had one picture, what would that one picture be? I promise you'll get a higher percentage of pictures
that's awesome.
That you like.
So what do you mean by gesture?
Well, gesture is in bird photography. If you're photographing a bird and the wings are just like this, level, it's not so good. So in bird photography, the tip is wings up or wings down.
Got it.
Or in people photography, have you seen the picture that Karsh of Ottawa took of Churchill? He's like Churchill's like he's like scowling at the and here's what happened. Karsh wanted to get a picture of Churchill not just sitting there, so Churchill was smoking a cigar, and he's photographing him. And Karsh says, "Okay, I know how to get a good gesture, a good expression out of him. Not only his body language, his facial expression, his everything." So he walked up to him, he took away a cigar, and then he took the picture.
That's right.
And that's how he got the picture. But gesture is when you're giving a look at Steve, right? What are these performers thinking about? Not only are they singing, are they looking good and sounding good and all this stuff, but it's the gesture of Pete Townsend running his hand around like that when he was playing. So gesture is and Jay Maisel, I first heard about this or started thinking about it when he was speaking at a Photoshop World. He's the king of of gesture. And you could have gesture in waves, right? If waves are crashing, you could have, a boring gesture of the waves, or you could have a beautiful gesture of the waves. So gesture is so important.
I love it.
Thank you.
Well, and one of the ones you told me years ago was horses.
Horses, right.
You want at least 1 foot off the ground type thing.
Oh, because of the motion, implied motion there.
Yeah, implied motion. Yeah.
I've talked a little bit about that in the past in previous photography communities, where I think of like if someone is taking a picture of a photograph, not a photograph, taking a picture of a vehicle versus the vehicle being parked and the vehicle going down the highway. And the one that's going down the highway, and especially if they're really good at figuring out how to pan, that seems to be a lot more thought-provoking and will evoke a lot more emotion out of people because of the implied motion of that car going down the highway. How fast is the car going? Is it going too fast? Where is it going? Where can I find this car? They never ask those questions when the car's just parked.
Yeah, the gesture adds to the story. Like, think about Sports Illustrated when they pick the covers where the football players are like this, or the athletes, whatever, the football players, the baseball players, or even the Sports Illustrated swimsuit models. It's the gesture. It's just not. They're just not standing there like this. So
true.
Well, it has to be
in drummers, I want a little bit of motion in the sticks most of the time, because otherwise it just looks like they're sitting like this. Right, but if I get a little motion in the sticks while keeping the eyes sharp, that is the gesture I want in a drummer shot.
So do you use this like a semi-fast shutter speed to get the drummers sharp and the sticks a little moving?
Yeah, you can still use a fast shutter speed. It's hard to believe how fast.
Yeah, because they're moving so fast, dude.
Yeah,
so, I mean, even at like 1/250th, you're going to get some blur from those sticks.
Oh, there's drummers who at 500th you're going to get blur.
Yeah, it's
you know what? I don't think a drummer's going to follow my advice about slowing down.
Let's hope not anyway.
I don't blame him or her.
So, Rick, in regards to bucket projects, do you still have one?
Yeah, I want to get really good at bass guitar.
Nice.
Man.
I just got a new bass, and I've been playing guitar. Actually, I went to Berklee College of Music after high school, and I majored in keyboards and arranging and composition. But this is my goal in life now, to get good at bass guitar. I'm taking bass lessons.
Oh,
he's a phenomenal guitarist, by the way.
I wish I could play guitar. I used to have.
It's never too late to be who you could have been.
No, you're right. You're right. I had an old guitar from one of my great uncles had an old electric guitar in his house that I took out after he passed away, and I piddled around with it here and there. And my problem was I didn't make time for it because I would practice just enough to get the calluses built up on my fingers.
Discipline.
Important.
Right. And then something would happen, and I would, have to put it down for a month or so, and I go and pick it back up again, and my fingers were killing me because I didn't have any calluses on it. And it just sort of like, oh, gosh, I can't do this. Guitar is so hard. So much respect to the people that are out there picking those things, and especially with the bass and those big, huge strings.
Well, bass only has 4 strings.
But they're massive strings, too.
But look at you. You got these muscles like this.
I have I will say I should be considered built to play a guitar because I have big hands, long fingers. I never had a problem with reaching on the chords and stuff, but it's just I didn't have the discipline for it. I failed.
But I mean, Rick, in regards to your photography bucket list,
I've been so many places with my wife. I don't really know. I always say the next trip is the best. It's going to be the next. I don't really know where we're going to wind up, but I actually love being home. I love writing. I love processing the pictures. But getting back to the guitar, Ant, do you ever go to Photoshop World?
I have not been to Photoshop World yet.
Well, Scott Kelby, who's an amazing guitar player. Frank Dorhoff, who teaches there, amazing guitar player. Mark Heaps, he was at Adobe Max.
Everybody plays.
Everybody plays. So if you
except
come,
Ant.
I could give you a lesson. I'll give you another one. It's not a one-picture promise. It'll be. I'm trying to think. It'll be like a one-piece promise. I could have you sounding good in half an hour.
What?
Oh my goodness! Challenge accepted.
I know, right?
Okay, great.
I bought my son a guitar, and he's kind of semi picked it up. I'm thinking, it's a nice guitar. I think I'll.
Oh my goodness!
Well, there's something called open tuning where you tune the strings to like an E chord, or you can tune it to a D or a G. But anyway, if you tune it, so if you just strum it, it sounds like a perfect chord. And if you put your finger just across the fret, you could play like a chord. So if you play it open on the 5th and the 7th fret, you could play a 1-3-5 song, and it'd be good in half an hour or less.
Oh, come on. Is that easy? Come on.
Joni Mitchell. You know Joni Mitchell, right?
Of course.
She did open tuning all the time, and she used a lot of these. So she'd tune it this way, and she'd just move her one finger on different frets to get the different chords.
Uh-huh.
Oh, man.
This is why we met, Ant. So you could become
Oh, my goodness. So now when I go home and some guitar is delivered, I can tell my wife, Mr. Sammon said so.
That's it. That's it.
Nice.
Mr. Sammon said to order it, so she can't yell at me anymore.
That's right.
All right. Before we get out of here, I want to ask you one more camera-related thing because of the tech nerd inside of me, sir. I know when you went to Antarctica, you pretty much focused on going with the mirrorless side of technology. Now, a lot of people have different opinions on going with mirrorless, whether it be the weight of it, whether it be the electronic viewfinder, because you're out there shooting snow and trying to figure out proper exposure with this tons of white background, and then you have these little black spots on these birds, and it's an exposure composition nightmare, if you ask me.
It's a challenge.
So what made you go with the mirrorless side of things in particular?
Well, I went last year also mirrorless with the Canon EOS R, and people think, they see it, oh man, it's so light, it's so compact. I didn't switch to mirrorless for that reason. I switched because of the electronic viewfinder. Yeah. I was right. It's 10 years, right? 10 years ago, how bad were electronic viewfinders? 10 years ago, I said, really this is like an old TV. Right. I can't see this. You can't. But now, focus. Not only is the picture sharp, but I think one of the most valuable things is that you could see the histogram, and you could see your exposure compensation like right in there. So I switched for the viewfinder. I think the viewfinder, and I would encourage people to be. And I'm sure all viewfinders aren't created equally, right?
Right.
On all cameras. But it's just amazing how, because I still use the viewfinder. Yes, it has a screen in the back, and I use that sometimes actually for some of the low penguin shots. I had the flip out screen and was able to hold the screen. Yeah, I love it. I mean, I don't know why super expensive cameras don't have that. It's the best thing, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But the viewfinder, seeing that histogram, seeing the color, seeing the accuracy, and you could see level and all your other information.
Right.
It's just I think it just I'm not really I actually don't know how many megapixels that camera has, and I only use about a third of the functions in there. But it's the viewfinder that made me switch.
I don't know the megapixels, but I really don't care. You know what I'm saying? It's just another tool. It's just, I don't care. Now, I'm going to see if I can get some information out of you. I'm sure I'm not, but I've been considering going ahead and just go ahead and buy the R myself, just because it's the first mirrorless that felt right in my hands. Because most mirrorless camera bodies, they were just too small in my hands, and the R felt right. And I'm used to the Canon ecosystem as far as the menus and things of that nature. But
it's the same menu almost as in the 5D Mark IV.
Right.
Oh, nice.
But now we're getting a lot of rumors in chat about a next iteration of the R, a Mark II. Can you comment on that? Can you tell me there's a Mark II coming in the next month or two or so, Mr. Sammon?
I think if there was,
it'll
I probably
just be between me and you.
Yeah, I think if there were, I probably would have had it in Antarctica. Right? I mean, what a place to show off a camera. But I think, and you mentioned the adapter before, right?
Right. Right.
So there are some. I have the 15 to 35, which is a new lens. I have the 24 to 105, but I have the adapter for my 100 to 400 and the 75 to 300. And a lot of people say, "Oh, you adapter, you're going to lose quality." Well, the adapter, just like all the other ones, it doesn't have any glass in it, so there's no loss in quality.
Outstanding.
So the mirrorless and the battery, everything's. That's the other thing. Remember, like 10 years ago, how fast again, people don't know how lucky they are today. 10 years ago, the batteries
20 minutes for
20 minutes, right?
Yeah.
Right. So it's amazing. We're so lucky to live in this age where we have the amazing and every camera that comes out, the dynamic range. If I were on this show like 5 years ago with my friend Steve, we'd be probably talking about, man, isn't HDR amazing? We could take all these pictures and put it into one. And now with the dynamic range expanding so much, I don't know too many people including me, who shoot HDR. You almost don't need it unless it's really contrasty.
It's already there now in the processing.
It's and Lightroom and the noise reduction features. We're so fortunate to be able to tell our stories. Thanks very easily. Thanks to technology.
Yeah,
indeed.
R&D.
So, Mr. Sammon, thank you again for joining us this week. This has just been an amazing time of just sitting here and picking your brain and hearing your stories and getting the insights and just soaking up all of that positive energy that you have.
Well, thank you. Can I ask you one question?
Yes, you
may, Are those supposed to be rabbit ears on the TV like in the back there?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
I bet a lot of your viewers don't know what rabbit ears are.
Right.
Hey, now wait a minute. The Twit army that watches us live here on live.twit.tv, those folks, they know. They know. Our Twit army goes deep.
You guys are great. One of my favorite expressions when it comes to photography, and I know we're wrapping up, so I'll talk fast, and Steve knows it, is that the camera looks both ways.
It does.
Nicely done.
In picturing the subject, we're picturing a part of ourselves. So our gesture, our body language, all our emotions that affects the picture. But you guys made this so much fun because, even though I'm seeing you on Skype here, your camera's looking both ways. So you make all your guests, I know, feel so comfortable and loved and welcome. And you guys are just doing an amazing job.
Oh, thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Well, it's always so much fun.
Now, we know we can find your latest book on Amazon. Again, that book is Phototherapy, Motivation, and Wisdom, Discovering the Power of Pictures. You can get that on Amazon. I'll link to that in our show notes, and I'll actually be sure to mention it on Twitter as well to the people that are following us there. But where else can we find more about you and some of your work, Mr. Sammon?
Do you call all your guests like Mr., by the way? Because I'm usually say, "Hey, Rick," I see Steve. Hey, dude.
Apparently, I do because everybody asks me that. So apparently, I do.
Well, it's very nice. Your mother would be proud of you.
Oh, I don't know. Give me about 5 minutes, and that'll change, I'm sure.
or usually now these days, I get from my son. He goes, "Yo," he picks up the phone, but it's ricksammon.com. SAMMON. Right. Everything is there.
All right.
And Chickenhead21 just put it in the chat room.
Oh, nice.
Thank you, Chickenhead21. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Chickenhead.
Also, Mr. Steve Brazill joining us again this week. Thank you so much, my man, my homie, my brother from another mother.
It is always my pleasure to sit in with you guys. And Alan Hess last week and Rick this week. I just love doing this.
Sweet.
You guys do a good job. Production quality's killer. For people that are listening to this, don't forget you can go watch this live when it airs at live.twit.tv, and the video is fun.
That's all a credit to our folks behind us here, Mr. John
super
cool. And Mr. John B. Jammer B.
Close enough. Whoops.
All the credit to those guys.
Yeah, they do good. They do good work.
I love it. So, Mr. Brazill, where do we find you online and your work, sir?
You can find me on Twitter or Instagram at Steve Brazill. It's like the country Brazil, but 2 L's. stevebrazill.com, or the podcast is behindtheshot.tv.
Nice. Definitely check
Which
out
Rick is actually my guest that's been on more than anybody.
Oh,
Him
nice.
and Don Komarechka.
Oh, sweet.
Great show, a great show of analysis on a particular photograph that the photographer brings up. But you also have another show, Mr. Brazill. You didn't mention it.
We are doing, with Don Komarechka, I've started doing image critiques. Those are on the YouTube channel for Behind the Shot. And in that show, I tell you how to get your image into the pool that we choose from for image critiques. It has to do with our Flickr group for Behind the Shot. But that's been a blast. Don Komarechka is just really a smart guy. Like every time I'm talking to him, I think to myself, I'm in over my head. But he's just a wonderful human, and we have an absolute blast critiquing images.
Yeah, nice. I look forward to talking to Mr. Don Com soon here on Focus on Photography. That'll be coming up in
you would love
great.
Don
He's
on
a
this
young, enthusiastic person. And Steve, when you were speaking, just gave me another idea for saying the microphone sounds both ways.
It does.
It does.
Because you make your guests feel so at ease too.
Nice.
So true. So true. Thank you again, Mr. Brazill. And my man, Woolsey. Where do we find you?
Both on Twit and Instagram at HeyWools with an S at the end. And then at michaelbwoolsey.com.
All right.
Yeah,
all
thanks.
right.
And that video that you just did of the restaurant was awesome.
What's that?
The restaurant video that you shared.
Oh,
yeah, that was
awesome.
Dude.
Oh, thank you.
That was hot. And again, when I saw that, I said, "That's Wolves." It had your fingerprints all over it.
Oh, thanks, man. It was so much fun.
You have your style and your own color palette, and it's boom. It's Wolves. I'm not there yet.
Yeah, you are.
One of these days. One of these days.
If you, how do they say? If you could dream it, you're halfway there.
Halfway there, then. Almost. All right, so thank you again, brother. Myself, I'm Ant Pruitt. Find me here at the Twit Studios. Just follow Ant Pruitt on Twitter. That's Ant_Pruitt, actually, because you got to be technical on Twitter. Ant_Pruitt on Twitter, as well as on Instagram. And also, folks, be sure to follow the Twit network on those platforms. We are twit.tv on Instagram and at Twit on Twitter. Follow us there. We share all of the content that's coming out of the studios each and every day, and a couple little behind the scenes things where we make fun of each other and just, have a good time, because this is a wonderful family here at Twit Studios, and we act like a family, and we like to share some of our fun times here. Also, folks, again, hop in each and every Thursday and watch us live, as Mr. Brazill mentioned. We record each Thursday at about 9 a.m. Pacific time, something like that. And if you just go to live.twit.tv, you'll be able to see this podcast on video format instead of just the audio version. And you can jump into our chat room and interact with us there. We do watch the chat as we're recording, and the chat room has been quite helpful a time or two with giving us some extra resources during our discussion that we can reference and just continuing to interact with the show. Again, I previously mentioned our annual survey, so go to twit.to/survey20 if you don't mind, folks, and fill that survey out so we can, help continue to provide the best content to you as our loyal listeners and viewers of the
I filled
network.
mine out.
Thank you, Mr. Brazill, and thank you for sharing that on Twitter. So if you don't want to fill out the survey, heck, share it on Twitter or Facebook or what have you, so our other folks can see it and they can go in there and fill it out. Follow me again on Hands On Photography. I'll be recording episodes on Thursdays as well. That's a little bit more of a tutorial-based show, quick hitter, if you will. This time we're going to talk about the histogram. Mr. Sammon talked about the histogram earlier in his discussion, and it's funny that he mentioned it because that's this week's topic of discussion. So I look forward to recording that later on today.
Did you see the show title recommendation from Chickenhead 21?
Show title:
Blue Ice and Penguin Poop.
Blue Ice and Penguin. That's a fascinating one.
That's good.
Well played. Well played.
So I do have. Can I ask one last question?
Sure.
So Rick, what do you think is as photographers, what do you think is our social responsibility to in this day and age in regards to our how we could maybe provoke change or through our work in photography?
Well, I think by posting positive pictures, because if you post a negative picture, of a flood area or something like that, or a famine, it's gonna have some negative reaction. So what I like to do is, and a lot of my friends I mentioned, Art Wolf, Jonathan and Angela Scott, the Big Cat people,
amazing people.
The same, right? Amazing. It's just posting positive pictures, and I think the future is the kids. And if we could reach the kids with our photography, because these people are going to be around longer than us, and they have a lot of energy.
Well said.
And so I encourage adults to get their kids to see the pictures and maybe show the pictures of a beautiful site that we were like an owl or whatever that we want to protect in the Northwest, rather than just posting all these pictures of themselves like an Instagram, like you were saying before, right? I mean, photography is such a powerful tool, and it is a universal language. So I think that's really important. So it's a very, very good question.
Now, see, that's awesome. So, folks, if you've been listening to this far, you got some bonus content this week on FOP. So, thank you again, Mr. Woolsey. Thank you again, Mr. Sammon.
Thank you so much.
We are going to get out of here, folks. Thank you all for your continued support of Focus on Photography here on twit.tv. Subscribe to us in your favorite podcatcher of choice. Also, hit the share button so everyone can find out more about Focus on Photography. That is twit.tv/FOP. It's twit.tv/FOP. And catch you guys each and every Thursday about 9 a.m. Pacific-ish, or just as soon as your podcatcher says, hey, the new feed is here and ready for you to listen. All right. Thank you all again. We will catch you next week. Get on out there, create, and dominate.
Thank you.